Once upon a time, I searched through the jungle, following a map poorly drawn on a piece of cloth. After days of walking, I reached an ancient Mayan temple. As soon as I stepped in, a strange noise echoed. I turned to leave, but suddenly the floor cracked beneath my feet. I fell into a 1600-year-old tomb. Finally, I got lucky. That day, I walked out with shiny jades, carved seashells, a creepy afterlife mask, and a curse that's been haunting me ever since. Well, okay, maybe it didn't happen exactly like that. Or maybe it didn't happen to me. Sadly, real-life archaeology is not like Indiana Jones movies. However, the findings can be as exciting and important, especially in Belize, where archaeologists just found the first identifiable ruler's tomb in the lost Mayan city of Caracol after 40 years of digging. A team of archaeologists finally unsealed a hidden chamber, buried deep beneath a structure they'd already studied. And inside that tomb, which is indeed around 1600 years old, was Tikab Shak, the first known king of Caracol. His name is commonly interpreted as Tree Branch Rain Deity, which is poetic and incredibly awesome. King Shak was believed to be a Mayan deity in control of rain, thunder, and lightning. According to folklore, he used axes to strike rain-bearing snakes in the sky to make the rain fall. The buried king is considered to be the dynasty founder. The royal dynasty he founded lasted more than 460 years. And judging by what was buried with him, we can assume that King Shak was greatly celebrated. His tomb had jade beads, carved bones, seashell jewelry, and ritual pottery vessels. One of those vessels shows Ekchuak, the Maya deity of trade, receiving offerings. Others showed bound prisoners. Archaeologists could tell they had found some high royalty when they noticed a considerable presence of red cinnabar in the tomb, a rare and expensive material from the Mayan world. Then there's a jade mosaic mask, pieced together like a puzzle to cover the king's face in brilliant green. Jade wasn't used just because it was shiny. It was sacred and symbolically associated with life and demise. Polished jade glistens like it's been dipped in water, cool at first, but quickly warming in your hand. To the ancient Maya, this lifelike quality made jade a living, breathing substance. And for this reason, it possessed high religious and spiritual importance. The Maya associated it with the breath of life, with royalty, and with eternity. Covering someone's face in jade showed just how high-ranking that person was. King Shak's mask has yet to be examined properly, but another famous mask of King Pakal was made of over 346 green jade stone fragments. That's a lot of painstaking work. But maybe the most symbolically fascinating thing about this king was that he was old. Not just lived a good life old, toothless old. To us, that means he didn't clean his teeth properly, because no, you don't usually lose teeth just from getting old, as long as you maintain good oral hygiene and dental care. On the other hand, according to Maya legends, toothless elders were believed to have spiritual powers. Rulers and shamans mediated between realms, and aged or underworld deities were often shown as toothless in art. Now, speaking of realms, Mayan cosmology divided the universe into three layers. The upper world was where the deities lived. The middle world was where humans lived. It was carried on the back of a giant turtle or caiman, and surrounded by a primordial sea. Beneath it was the underworld, known as Xibalba, a dark and complex realm of spirits and ancestors. And certain people, especially rulers, shamans, and elders, were believed to move between these worlds. This king was a ruler, had a deity-like name, and was a toothless elder. Boy, his power level must have been off the charts. But that's not all. Here's the eerie part. The tomb was buried beneath another tomb, which was discovered all the way back in 1993. Archaeologists were investigating a different burial when they realized there was another chamber hidden beneath it, an interesting hiding place. Remarkably, it worked. For more than 1600 years, no one found him. This makes Tikab Shak's tomb the first ever discovered at Caracol that can be definitely linked to a known ruler, thanks to hieroglyphs, burial context, and artifacts. Now, if you're not a geography or history buff, you've probably never heard of Caracol. Today, it's a remote ruin deep in the jungles of western Belize. But around 16 centuries ago, Caracol was one of the largest and most powerful cities in the entire Maya world. At its peak, it covered over 77 square miles, which, for reference, is larger than modern-day Belize City. Its population was around 100,000 people. That's more than most cities in Europe had at that time. And it wasn't just big, it was advanced. Caracol had pyramids, ball courts, palaces, reservoirs, and a very complex road system. Stuff like limestone superhighways stretching miles through the jungle. Past excavations also turned up arrowheads, drills, spindle whorls, figurines, and everyday tools. King Shak's tomb was one of the 3 major tombs found in the northeast Acropolis. That's near Kana, the central archaeological complex at Caracol, and one of the tallest human-made buildings in all of Belize, even today. It reaches an imposing 141 feet high and contains multiple levels of elite residences and temples. But even with that size, finding tombs isn't easy at all. Most have already been looted. We don't know what else can be hidden there, and in some places, it's too risky to dig up without causing damage. That's why it took researchers decades to finally find something untouched. However, they were able to report over 850 burials and 175 tombs at Caracol over their 4-decade-long project. One of the earliest tombs, dating to around 350 CE, was a cremation burial containing ritual artifacts such as obsidian blades, atlatl spear points, and ceramic styles associated with central Mexico. So, if you're an archaeologist, this city seems to be an old historical gold mine. And old historical gold mines often come with warnings. For one thing, it's "keep out, the ceiling might fall on you." Besides, even though scientists are excited about this discovery, if the king can really walk between realms, he's probably annoyed by all this. So what happens now that the king's eternal rest has been disturbed? Well, by opening and stepping into the tomb of Tekhab Shak, archaeologists basically stepped into a sealed sacred place. Maya tombs weren't just holes in the ground with a fancy coffin. They were sealed like cosmic vaults, locked up with stone, soil, and sometimes elaborate closing rituals. The goal was to mark the end of their use and protect what was inside. Archaeology at Caracol and other Maya cities shows this in action: thick ceiling layers, termination offerings, and carefully placed debris, all saying, "This place is done, keep out." Today's archaeologists still treat them that way, working under Belizean laws and cultural protocols, making sure they explore with respect for what these spaces meant to the people who built them. However, it's eerie to think about mythology and whether King Shak is going to haunt the archaeologists. I guess we'll see. They shouldn't be afraid because he's old and has no teeth. Maybe he will annoy them with rain. He's named after a rain deity, after all, and we still don't know about his true power level. The Mayans were a fascinating civilization, and their structures are still among the most mysterious ones you can find. Despite being isolated from the known world, they also built pyramids without cranes, mapped stars without telescopes, and knew how to bury a king. Caracol is full of secrets: a hidden tomb under another tomb, a toothless king with a scary-looking mask and a deity's name. Almost unbelievable. And, amazingly, there is still stuff being found. So maybe it's not too late for me after all. But first, let's see the aftermath of this curse, huh? Archaeologists in Panama kept finding chiefs covered in gold under a plain sunburned field. Weird enough, then they found chief regalia so small it could only belong to a child. That discovery shifted the interpretation of the site. El Caño was no longer just a rich ceremonial site. It looked more like a place where power could pass from one generation to the next. And now, a newly opened chamber there has expanded that picture. El Caño stands apart from the usual ancient gold story. The newest chamber, dated to around AD 800 to 1000, didn't just produce shiny artifacts. It added another piece to a much larger pattern. Archaeologists found pottery, gold ornaments, and a central high-status person marked out by where the gold was placed. This was not random wealth in the dirt. It was a public statement about rank. The objects themselves are vivid: 2 bracelets, 2 earrings, pectoral ornaments decorated with bats and crocodiles. Those are not the kind of items someone tosses in casually. They were chosen to say something, in a world with no billboards, no spotlights, and no giant stone inscriptions. Gold did the talking. It told everyone exactly who mattered most in that chamber. The location makes this even more striking. Not Egypt, not Peru, not some famous archaeological landscape packed with giant ruins, central Panama. Historically, this region was often treated as the place between the main acts of the ancient Americas, wedged between the Maya to the north and the great Andean cultures to the south. El Caño repeatedly challenges that older view. That old assumption existed for a reason. This part of Panama does not hit you like a stone-built empire. There's no skyline of huge temples, no carved dynastic walls, no dramatic ruins screaming a powerful society was here. In tropical Central America, a lot of everyday life was built in materials that don't age gracefully. Wood, thatch, fibers, skin, feathers. Most of it simply doesn't stick around for 1,000 years. So when gold survives, it becomes one of the loudest voices left. And El Caño did not give up that voice quickly. Julia Mayo's team began geophysical surveys there in 2005. By 2010, they had dug a pit about 16 feet deep and uncovered a chief covered in gold. Then the site kept escalating. More ornaments appeared. More chambers turned up. More evidence started linking this field to a whole ceremonial landscape. This was not a lucky weekend dig. It was years of slow, patient work, turning a quiet pasture into one of the biggest archaeological stories in Panama. The contrast is striking from the surface. El Caño looks ordinary, the kind of place where you'd expect grass, cattle, and heat, not dynasties. But under that ordinary ground, archaeologists found symbols of authority designed to be seen from a distance. Polished gold would have caught the harsh sunlight. Chest ornaments likely flashed when a leader moved. Animal imagery, bats, crocodiles, and other powerful creatures turned jewelry into a visual language of authority. This was status you could spot instantly. And the newest chamber matters because it is not standing alone. Mayo said the site has produced 9 similar chambers and that this was a place where elite individuals were laid to rest for about 200 years. This finding expands the interpretation of the site. One rich chamber is interesting. A ceremonial resting ground used by powerful people across multiple generations suggests something else entirely. It begins to resemble a long-running system. You can see that system even more clearly in another major El Caño find from 2024. Archaeologists uncovered the shared chamber of an important Cocle lord buried around 750 to 800 CE. Inside were gold ornaments, ceramic objects, bells, skirts, and a set of flutes. The team dubbed him the Lord of the Flutes, which sounds almost legendary until you remember this is not a myth. It's a real person from a real ceremonial tradition found in the same site. The scale grows even larger around that burial. Researchers found many other individuals placed in the same setting. Reports said the total could reach more than 30 people. At that point, you are no longer looking at one important person with a collection of objects. You are looking at an event, a choreographed display, a message to everyone watching that this leader stood at the center of a much bigger social order. This interpretation is supported by research. A 2020 study of El Caño's multiple chambers found the same basic pattern again and again. One highest status individual in each other, people arranged around that central figure, and a strong sense that the whole composition represented social order. The authors also concluded that some of these final ceremonies involved very harsh ritual practices. The layout itself was part of the performance of power. Now go back to the child-sized regalia, because that might be the strangest clue of all. One of Mayo's earlier breakthroughs came when she realized a set of tiny gold objects was too small for an adult. They appear to have belonged to a baby adorned like a chief. Later, the team found gold arm cuffs on the skeleton of a 12-year-old boy. Both finds point in the same direction. Status here may not have been something a person earned late in life. It may have started at birth. That implication is significant. If rank passed from father to son, then El Caño was not showing us a few isolated leaders. It was revealing a hereditary power system. That means established families, succession, and rules strong enough for an entire community to recognize them. Gold-working specialists had to exist, ceremonial knowledge had to be preserved, labor had to be organized. These were not loose little villages improvising everything as they went. This was structure. It also explains why El Caño feels bigger than a treasure story. Gold draws attention first. The real subject is political sophistication. The objects are only useful because of what they reveal: hierarchy, ceremony, inherited authority, and a leadership class that could stage power in a way everyone understood. Gold is what catches your eye first. The social system is what keeps the site interesting once the shine wears off. There is another reason El Caño matters so much. Less than 2 miles away sits Sitio Conte, the older Panamanian site that had long provided the main evidence for this gold-rich tradition. For years, Sitio Conte was the big reference point. Then El Caño started turning up its own chiefs, its own ornaments, its own ceremonial patterns. Suddenly, this was not one isolated hotspot. It was a broader cultural world, hiding in plain sight across the same landscape. Once you imagine that world, El Caño becomes incredibly visual. No giant stone monuments. Fine, the ceremony can still feel huge. Flutes playing, bells moving, gold breastplates flashing, beads sewn into clothing, animal symbols broadcasting lineage and rank. One early chief found at El Caño wore gold breastplates, arm cuffs, a bracelet of bells, a belt of hollow gold beads, and more than 2,000 tiny gold spheres arranged as if sewn onto a sash. That is not subtle fashion. That is ceremonial theater. Imagine one of these final ceremonies. A leader is placed at the center, gold catches the light. Music carries across the field. Companions are arranged with strict meaning. Everyone present can read the scene without a single written word. This person held the highest place. These families mattered. This order continues even now. The point was not private grief. The point was public memory and public hierarchy. That is why El Caño changes the history of Panama in a very specific way. It does not just add one more archaeological attraction to the map, it shows that central Panama had its own powerful chiefs, its own ceremonial specialists, its own symbols of rank, and probably its own dynastic lines. This region was not just absorbing importance from bigger neighbors, it was generating its own, and the site is still making that point clearer. El Caño has already revealed multiple elite chambers across years of excavation, and each new one expands the story. So the key discovery here is not a bracelet, or an earring, or even a chamber filled with gold. It is the realization that an ordinary Panamanian field was hiding a cemetery of rulers and clues to a forgotten power system that had been there the whole time, just waiting for someone to look deeper.
Scientists have discovered a never-before-seen pyramid immersed in the sands of Judea. After a little digging, they discovered that it held treasures that had been untouched for over 2 millennia and historical secrets that we can only now access. At the Zohar Fortress site, 2,600 feet above the Dead Sea, archaeologists were searching for manuscripts that would provide new information about the history of the site. The excavation was originally part of a long-standing campaign launched by the authorities. Its goal was to protect the sites from looting and unauthorized excavations. What they didn't expect was to find a pyramid-shaped structure built on top of a hill, made of hand-cut stones, each weighing hundreds of pounds. At first, the experts thought it was just a tomb, but they soon noticed the shape of the original walls and understood that the mound was a construction. They immediately realized that someone had dug into the top of the structure, probably looters who had spotted something valuable there. Luckily, most of the structure was still buried in sand, so the most valuable finds were hidden from sight. In the first week of excavation, volunteers found fragments of papyrus, bronze vases, and even ancient furniture, which were exceptionally well preserved. The desert climate had been a great ally in preserving those artifacts over the millennia. With little humidity in the air, mold cannot form, so organic materials such as wood and fibers are protected from cracking and deformation. Hypotheses suggested that the pyramid had been built during the First Temple period. However, new discoveries have shown that it's more recent, from the Hellenistic period. Considering this and the fact that the structure dates back 2,200 years, It's believed that it probably appeared shortly after the death of Alexander the Great, the famous ancient Greek king of Macedonia. At that time, his generals divided the former Seleucid Empire. Ptolemy took control of Egypt and the surrounding regions, including the Dead Sea area, while Seleucus took control of the north, which is now part of the Middle East. It's still not known for sure whether the pyramid was built under the rule of the Ptolemaics or the Seleucids. Both Ptolemaic coins and coins from the Seleucid kingdom have been found at the site. Even so, many scholars believe it was built when the region was under Ptolemaic control. Evidence also suggests that the building, despite its longevity, collapsed at some point. But that's not why it was abandoned by the ancient Egyptians, which begs the question of what purpose it was built for. Some believe it was used as a tomb due to its picturesque location on top of a hill. Others believed it may have served as a historical monument. However, one of the strongest theories is that the pyramid was a guard tower, protecting an important trade route along which salt and bitumen resources from the Dead Sea were transported to coastal ports. They also believe it may have been used by Ptolemaic officials to collect taxes from travelers. It would be something equivalent to our modern-day toll booths, or even port inspection agencies. Although the contents of the papyrus documents remain a mystery, it seems very likely they were written using the Greek alphabet, and some experts believe that they may have been tax documents, which would make perfect sense, given the theory that the pyramid was a guard tower. The team calls it a fascinating historical mystery that the dig is helping to unravel, but the find is just a grain of sand in an entire desert. The dig is part of a larger project that's been going on for a long time. And in the last 8 years alone, it has scanned 111 miles of desert cliffs and identified approximately 900 caves within that radius. Using rappelling equipment, advanced technology, and specialized documentation methods, archaeologists discovered thousands of rare items, such as hidden scrolls, woodworking tools, carpets, leather goods, and even treasures. For them, the Judean desert is an ancient vault just waiting to be opened to reveal its secrets. A few years before they found the mysterious pyramid, they discovered a cave that had served as a refuge for Jewish rebels almost 1900 years ago. The site was about 262 feet from the top of a cliff, and because of its difficult access, it hadn't been explored yet. Inside, they found previously unpublished fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls that contained religious passages written in Greek. 11 lines of text were reconstructed thanks to the good condition of the papyri. So, scientists were able to identify their etymological content. Probably the best thing, there was no problem with preservation. Thanks to the dry and hot conditions of the desert, the artifacts were in impeccable condition. And there were other historical treasures there. The teams found rare coins, a partially mummified skeleton over 6,000 years old, with skin, tendons, and even strands of hair. There was also a giant basket made of plant fibers, considered the oldest in the world, more than 10,000 years old. With a capacity of up to 26 gallons, it was made about 1,000 years before the invention of ceramics. Speaking of historical treasures, there's another one that has caught the attention of the scientific community. A small piece of fabric that is around 3,800 years old. But it's more than just simple fabric. Dyed with the rare scarlet paint mentioned many times in ancient religious texts, this find is the oldest known evidence of fabric painted with a dye made from insects known as scarlet worms. This is where the intense red hue comes from. It was a highly valued color, like royal blue and purple, because those insects lived in oak trees and could only be harvested for a short period during the year. So, those dyes were reserved for sacred fabrics, such as priests' clothes, marking status and religious importance. And although this discovery had great significance for archaeology, its size was actually tiny, measuring less than 1 inch. The fragment was discovered in 2016 during excavations in the so-called Cave of Skulls, but it's not known exactly how this fabric got there. According to experts, it's evidence that people knew how to dye wool fibers already 3,800 years ago or so. It also provides us with proof that the ancient textile industry already used animals at about the same time people began to create written sources. Fabrics painted using this type of dye were recorded in more recent periods. But what makes this piece really special is the fact that it is much older than any other. Another important discovery was made in 1980, when scientists found a seed that was over 1,000 years old, which turned into a mysterious tree named Sheba. They spent 14 years cultivating this plant, which is now about 10 feet tall, only to discover later that it could belong to an extinct lineage of trees that had grown in the region. The seed dates back to a period between 993 and 1202 CE, and they believe that Sheba may be a biblical tree commonly associated with healing. Although it's not been possible to identify the exact species, since the tree hasn't flowered, we know that it belongs to the genus Commiphora, which is related to famous African plants, such as the myrrh tree. But time has revealed something even more special. Its leaves and resins are rich in compounds that have medicinal, antioxidant, and even skin-soothing properties. This means that the tree may represent a forgotten lineage whose resin had medicinal value and was mentioned in ancient texts. This brings to light how ancient people dealt with botanical medicine. Archaeologists recently found something fascinating from a forgotten Maya kingdom, a tomb hidden in a collapsing pyramid. Inside, there was a king buried for 1,700 years, a jade mask that looks almost human, but not quite. And all this thanks to the looters who missed it by just 6 feet. They stumbled upon it in 2022 in the dense jungles near the border of Guatemala, Mexico, and Belize. In Mayan times, this little place used to be called Xochitlam. It's a lost city, half swallowed by jungle. This place meant pretty much nothing compared to other big Mayan cities, like Tikal or Teotihuacan, or so we thought. The team found a tomb of a Mayan ruler. The artifacts, the names of kings, all this revealed that Xochitlam wasn't just some tiny village. It was a pretty important place for that culture, and what they found inside that tomb may rival the treasures of any Maya metropolis. The tomb's ceiling had collapsed long ago, but the offerings were still inside and remained intact even after centuries. They recovered over 16 spondylus shells. These things were used by the ancient elite for power and rituals. That meant that whoever the tomb was related to, it was someone wealthy, of high status, who got themselves a ceremonial burial. Archaeologists also found carved femur bones. They were etched with hieroglyphs and names. Maya literally wrote their history in human remains. Researchers want to dive super deep and get a DNA analysis on the bones. Maybe that will help uncover familial ties, origins, or health problems these people might have faced. And most important of all, the mosaic jade mask. It was pieced together from luminous green tiles into an expression that feels almost human, almost alive. A lot of people were joking that it's just like Jim Carrey's mask in the famous movie. But it wasn't a magical artifact. That was the face of a forgotten Maya king, staring out at us after 1,700 years of silence. His name was etched into the femur bones, Itzam Kokaj Balam. Historians think this might be the ruler who reigned around 350 BCE. Unfortunately, this period is super underdocumented. We barely know anything about those times, but it looks like he was pretty important to the locals. One of the bones even showed a carved figure holding a deity's severed head. The deity's head looks exactly like the jade mask. Perhaps this was supposed to be the king himself, defeating some mythological villain. Other inscriptions mention the king's father and grandfather. That links Xochitlam to the mighty Maya capitals we mentioned, Tikal and Teotihuacan. Tikal was once the beating heart of the Maya world. It was a fascinating megapolis. A city rose from the Guatemalan lowlands with towering step pyramids that scraped the sky. That place was home to tens of thousands of people. It was also a hub of art, astronomy, and culture. The rulers were worshipped almost as living deities. Their deeds were carved into stelae that still stand amid the howler monkeys. Teotihuacan was located even further north. Now that was a mystery of another kind. It wasn't really Mayan, but rather Central Mexican. But still, that was a true metropolis, one of the largest cities in the world during its time. It was most famous for its Avenue of the Dead and colossal structures like the Pyramid of the Sun. It was a rich cultural center that had a worldwide influence. For centuries, both Tikal and Teotihuacan seemed to have completely different cultures. Tikal was a flourishing city-state where people loved reading, astronomy, and beautiful architecture. Teotihuacan was a titanic militaristic superpower. Two big centers of Mexico, separated by 600 miles of jungle and mountains. Compared to these imperial capitals, Xochitlam was a whisper. But it looked like this Itzam guy from the tomb wasn't just a ruler of a random village. He seemed to have political ties in ancient Mesoamerica. The craziest part is that we almost lost this piece of history, all because of the looters. At some point in the past, grave robbers had tunneled dangerously close. They stopped digging just 6.5 feet away from the tomb. That's just like in that meme with the diamonds. Sometimes you stop digging right before you hit it big. But in our case, thank heavens they didn't get there first. That's how close we came to losing a piece of history. In an almost poetic irony, it was the looters' tunnels themselves that led Estrada Belli's team to the site. Archaeologists have been looking around and using the so-called LiDAR technology. That's basically laser beams shot from high above, which help them map the spot. It's like taking X-rays of the jungle floor. And that's when they found the little signs of intrusion. They quickly realized that if someone was digging here, they were probably looking for something important. Without the failing looters, they might have walked past a discovery. In any case, archaeologists want to keep searching. They might even find more chambers buried inside the abandoned pyramid. We just keep finding mysterious things related to the Maya. Recently, buried deep within the ruins of Tikal, archaeologists found a house, and in that house, a limestone altar. It was covered in vibrant murals of red, yellow, and black. What's weird is that this build wasn't made by Maya. It was unmistakably Teotihuacan in style. And just like the tomb from before, it was made about 1,700 years ago. The altar was discovered inside a Maya-era residence known as Group 6DX7. It stood 3.5 by 6 feet right in the center of the home. That was very typical for Teotihuacan traditions. It bore a mural of the storm god. That was also a central deity in the Teotihuacan pantheon. But this altar depicted no kings and no rulers. That's very weird. As we said, Maya worshipped and honored their dynasties and political power, putting them pretty much everywhere, like some merch. But instead, this altar worshipped the deities alone, and it did so in the heart of Maya's main capital, Tikal. When archaeologists dived deeper, they saw it as unmistakable proof that Teotihuacanos not only came to Tikal, they thrived there. This house wasn't some trade outpost. People actually lived in it. Teotihuacanos built homes, practiced their rituals, and left their deities behind in this city. And Maya seemed to be chill about that. Researchers think this was a home for some elite people from Teotihuacan, or maybe it belonged to Mayans who practiced Teotihuacano culture and deeply respected it. But it might be something darker than a simple, friendly multiculturalism. The two cities weren't in the best relationship. There was some tension, maybe even surveillance. The house and the altar were probably built around 300 to 400 BCE. That was a period when Tikal was rising in power. This might have caught the attention of the mighty empire to the north. It's almost as if Mayans poked the beast. By 400 to 450 BCE, that attention may have become something sinister. The altar could have actually been the symbol of domination. Had the Maya of Tikal truly welcomed their guests, or did they come here and bluntly started building foreign altars in sacred spaces? Did Teotihuacan use this as some kind of soft invasion? In that case, it would make sense for Mayans to destroy that place or vandalize it somehow. Mayans regularly buried their buildings and rebuilt on top of them. But for some reason, this altar remained untouched. Mayans found it and buried it with the surrounding buildings as they were. No vandalism, no destruction, no rebuilding even. Looks like they had some complicated feelings about Teotihuacans. It was a time when cultures clashed, fused, overlapped, and possibly spied on each other. Perhaps one day we'll learn more about what really happened among these ancient civilizations.
Some mountains look so picture-perfect that you'd swear they were hand-sculpted by a divine architect. And the thing is, you're not that wrong if you think so. Wait, did someone really build mountains? Hidden deep in the Amazon rainforest, there's a bizarre cone-shaped peak that raises that exact question. And halfway across the world, there's a landscape that looks like someone spilled a massive bag of Hershey Kisses across a green field. No, you can't make this stuff up. Get ready to learn what would happen if a Hershey's Kiss and the Road to El Dorado movie had a baby in real life, because we're diving into two of the most mysterious and oddly satisfying natural formations on Earth, Cerro El Cono in Peru and the Chocolate Hills in the Philippines. One might be an ancient lost pyramid, and the other turns into chocolate every year. Well, sort of. Let's start with El Cono. This strange, solitary mountain rises more than 1,300 feet above the treetops in the heart of the Amazon, right near the Peru-Brazil border. Sure, the Amazon is no stranger to mountains. There are impressive ranges, like the Amiri Mountains farther north and the Andes, not in the Amazon per se, but running along Peru's spine. But you see, El Cono is different. For starters, it's completely isolated. If you fly over the region in a helicopter, all you'll see for miles is an endless emerald sea of rainforest. Then, boom, out of nowhere, a perfectly cone-shaped mountain juts into the sky like a giant green Dorito. It's not part of any major mountain chain, it doesn't have any siblings, and it looks so symmetrical that it almost feels artificial. And it's covered by forest. Now, naturally, this has sparked all kinds of theories. Some people think it's an extinct volcano. Others say it's a freak of erosion. And then there are those who whisper more exciting possibilities. What if it's a lost pyramid? And before you roll your eyes, this idea is not as wild as it sounds. And some people actually stand by this theory. After all, the ancient civilizations of South America built pyramids too. What? Yeah, can you believe that the Egyptians didn't actually invent the concept of pyramids? No joke. The Mochi Chachapoya and Inca civilizations all built monumental structures. In fact, pyramids are found all over the world, from Ethiopia and Thailand to Greece, Mexico, and even Italy. So why do pyramids keep popping up throughout history? Simple. They're structurally sound. The broad base supports the weight, and the pointed top was often seen as a symbolic connection to the heavens. Okay, but what are the chances of all these people coming up with the same idea at the same time? Okay, calm down. Ancient aliens. Yeah, that's possible. But as it turns out, ancient people did talk to each other via trade, migration, and cultural exchange. Ideas like pyramids didn't need to come from a secret one-world civilization. They just came from smart, curious humans scattered across the globe, all looking up at the stars and wondering how to get closer. In fact, recent archaeological discoveries have revealed massive ancient cities deep in the jungle that were completely swallowed by nature. In Guatemala, scientists uncovered a lost Maya city with its own pyramid structures. In Mexico, an entire metropolis was found buried beneath forested hills. So yes, humanity can forget an entire city. Take another look at El Cono from the air, and you might start believing it too. Its slopes are smooth. Its symmetry is uncanny. From above, it resembles a colossal step pyramid or ziggurat, cloaked in jungle vines and secrecy. And if someone told you it was the moss-covered remnant of an ancient civilization, you might just nod and say, "Yeah, I see it." Of course, no one's proven anything yet. But the mystery is delicious. Like a myth waiting to be cracked open. At the same time, for people who live nearby, El Cono isn't just a geological curiosity, it's sacred. In Andean cosmology, mountains like El Cono are known as apus, spiritual guardians of the land. These aren't just rocks, they're living beings, protectors, deities. Think Te Fiti from Moana, but South American and a little more mysterious. The indigenous tribes in the region still pay their respects to this mountain, treating it not as a tourist attraction, but as a sacred ancestor. And while everyone's busy debating whether El Cono is a mountain or a pyramid, nature's just vibing. The area surrounding El Cono is now part of Sierra del Divisor National Park, created in 2015 to protect one of the richest ecosystems in the Amazon. We're talking about rare plants, hundreds of bird species, many types of monkeys, and endangered animals like jaguars, giant armadillos, and even tapirs, the jungle's adorable pig-elephant hybrid. And yes, there are caves, springs, and even undiscovered ruins hidden deep in the forest around El Cono. So, what is El Cono really? Some geologists think it's likely a volcanic cone based on its shape. That's the official word from UNESCO anyway. Others argue it's a rare example of erosional geomorphology, a fancy way of saying wind, water, and time teamed up to carve a perfect mountain out of the landscape. Like geological origami, shaped by millions of years of natural forces. But the truth is, we don't know. Not for sure. Not yet. Until someone launches a respectful science-based expedition with drones, ground-penetrating radar, and a green light from the local communities, El Cono will keep its secrets. And maybe that's the best part. Sometimes it's mysteries that make the world feel truly magical. Now, let's jump onto a metaphorical plane and head to the Philippines, where the mystery continues and gets a little sweeter. Spread across more than 20 square miles, there are between 1,200 and 1,700, or even more, perfectly shaped hills that look like chocolate kisses. Like seriously. In the dry season, the grass turns brown, and suddenly, it's like someone dropped hundreds of Hershey kisses all over the landscape. Sweet, right? These are the Chocolate Hills, duh. And they're some of the Philippines' most iconic natural wonders. From afar, they look almost too symmetrical, like some alien landscaper came down with a measuring tape and a sense of humor. But how did they get here? Well, according to scientists, the Chocolate Hills are a rare type of karst formation, a term used to describe landscapes formed when slightly acidic rainwater dissolves soft rock like limestone. In this case, the hills were once coral reefs and marine limestone that were pushed above sea level by tectonic forces. Over time, the exposed rocks got eroded by wind, rain, and underwater rivers, leaving behind this stunning army of symmetrical mounds. It's a geological marvel millions of years in the making. But science isn't the only explanation in town. Local legends are more fun. One story says the hills were formed when two giants got into a rock-throwing fight, launching boulders at each other until they collapsed in exhaustion, leaving the landscape littered with mounds, just like that one scene from the Hobbit movie. Another tale speaks of a heartbroken giant whose tears turned into earth, forming the hills as a tribute to his lost love. Oh. Today, the Chocolate Hills are a National Geological Monument and a major tourist attraction in the Philippines. They're also being considered for UNESCO World Heritage status, because, really, where else can you find such a naturally satisfying mix of geology and dessert? If you ever want to visit, it's pretty easy. Fly into Boho Palango International Airport or take a ferry from Cebu, and then head to the towns of Carmen, Batuan, or Sambanga. There are designated viewing decks, eco-parks, and even ATV tours that will let you explore the hills up close. So, whether you're chasing lost pyramids in the jungle or climbing a mountain that turns into chocolate in the summer, the planet still has places that surprise and delight. And that's the real treasure. Sometimes, nature's weirdest, most beautiful shapes aren't hiding aliens or ancient tech. They're just proof that Earth has a wild imagination.